Here's something surprising. In 1776, roughly 90% of Americans had a basic understanding of what you're about to hear about the Declaration of Independence. Today, 90% have never developed any understanding of a document that literally altered the world. Thomas Jefferson warned about exactly that kind of drift. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Combating ignorance is the job of every generation. This video breaks the Declaration down into clear, understandable elements and then connects it to the U.S. Constitution, so you can see how the two documents relate to each other. This Declaration breakdown consists of 9 key concepts, organized into 3 parts. 9 things everyone should know about the Declaration of Independence and how it inspired the Constitution. Part 1. The basic structure, how the document's 1,400 words are shaped. Part 2. The Declaration's 7 elements. Part 3. How the Declaration and the Constitution work together, the relationship between the two documents. Part 1. The basic structure. The Declaration of Independence is just under 1,400 words total. Here's how it breaks down. About 400 words, split roughly evenly between the opening and closing, lay out the core principles and beliefs the United States was founded on. The remaining 1,000 words, sitting in the middle of the document, list over 25 specific abuses committed by King George III over a 10-year period. So picture the document in 3 layers: a weighty introduction, an even weightier list of grievances in the middle, and a powerful closing. Understanding that shape, introduction, grievances, conclusion, is the first key concept. Part 2. The Declaration's 7 elements. Now consider the 7 elements that make up the Declaration, the concepts that give Part 2 its detail. Element 1. The reason for the Declaration. This is the famous opening sentence that begins when in the course of human events. In short, when one people are compelled to separate from another and take their place among the nations of the world, basic respect for the opinions of humanity requires them to explain why. Element 2. The self-evident truths. This is the part most people know by heart. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's worth pausing on happiness. In the modern age, happiness is often confused with hedonism, with pleasure-seeking. That is not what the founders meant. To them, the pursuit of happiness meant something closer to this: the freedom to use your time, talent, and resources to pursue the path in life you believe will bring the most genuine satisfaction, and to benefit from the fruits of your labor to share with your family, friends, fellow man, and future generations as you see fit. Element 3. The purpose of government. Tucked into this same paragraph, the founders explain why government exists at all. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Government's entire justification, in other words, is to protect the unalienable rights given by the Creator. Nothing more. Element 4. The right to alter or abolish government. The logical follow-through. When a government becomes destructive of those ends, when it stops protecting those self-evident truths, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. Element 5. The list of grievances against King George. This is the biggest section of the document. Over 1,000 words, more than 25 specific abuses committed by King George III over a decade. The colonists laid this list out as evidence that their declaration was justified. Among the grievances: unfair taxation, cutting off trade, abolishing good and helpful laws, making arbitrary laws himself, creating new government departments to harass the people, denying colonists trial by jury, attempting to establish military rule, hiring mercenaries to harass and kill colonists, forcing captured colonists to fight against their own countrymen. The 25-plus specific abuses fall into about a dozen general categories, but the message is clear. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a carefully documented case. Element 6. The actual Declaration of Freedom. After the grievances comes the actual declaration, the formal statement. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. Notice the wording carefully. United colonies becoming free and independent states. The colonists weren't merging 13 colonies into a single nation state. They viewed each colony as becoming its own sovereign state, on the same footing as Great Britain, France, or any other nation on earth. It was, quite literally, the United Sovereign States of America. Element 7. The Signers' Pledges. The final sentence contains two pledges. First, a pledge to God, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. Second, a pledge to one another. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Historical detail of the signing. The actual history is more detailed than the popular version. July 2nd, 1776, the Second Continental Congress voted for independence. This vote was the moment the colonies formally broke from Great Britain. July 4th, 1776, Congress adopted the Declaration's final wording. Printer John Dunlap rushed out the first printed copies for public distribution that night, carrying the printed names of Hancock and Thompson, not yet actual signatures. August 2nd, 1776, the engrossed parchment was ready, and the formal signing began. Hancock signed first, with about 49 delegates following that day. Stragglers signed over the following months, the last as late as January 1777. Why sign at all if the July 2nd vote was legally binding? That's the seventh element, the signers' pledges. The vote made independence real. The signing was the personal follow-through, putting their names to the pledge of our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Signing was serious business. In 1775, Dr. Joseph Warren, president of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, militia major general, and John Adams' family doctor, was beheaded by the British in the aftermath of Bunker Hill. Warren was known personally to many signers of the Declaration, and they all knew his fate. They understood exactly what they were risking. Having just been through the Declaration's opening and closing, you've now covered more of this founding document than 90% of 21st century Americans ever do. That's all 7 elements of the Declaration. Next, how this founding document connects to the next one that would organize the nation that the newly independent states formed 13 years later. Part 3, how the Declaration and the Constitution connect. With a fresh understanding of the Declaration, it's time for the third key idea, how it connects to the U.S. Constitution, starting with the definitions of two terms, charter and bylaws. A charter is a document issued by a sovereign, legislature, or other authority defining its privileges, principles, beliefs, and purposes. Bylaws are the rules an organization adopts to govern its members and regulate its affairs. You see this same relationship in business today. A charter explains why a company exists. Bylaws explain how it organizes and governs itself. This relationship exists between America's founding documents. The Declaration of Independence is the charter, the purpose document. It explains why the United States exists and the legal authority derived from the laws of nature and of nature's God. The U.S. Constitution is the bylaws, the organizational document. It explains how the United States governs itself to fulfill the aspirations of the Declaration. Look at the language in tandem. From the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is a statement of core, universal, eternal principles, rights granted not by government, but by God. The Constitution's Preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. That's 6 core purposes, laying out how the country plans to organize itself to give life to what the Declaration declared. From there, the Constitution goes on to establish the 3 branches of government: Congress, the President, and the Supreme Court, as the mechanics for carrying out the Preamble. There are other connections that specifically trace a single Constitution clause back to a single line in the Declaration. Remember the right to alter or abolish government? Article 5, the Constitution's amendment process, builds that into law. The Declaration named the right, and the Constitution gave it life. Another detail connects directly to the Declaration's reference to the United Colonies becoming free and independent states, that is 13 separate countries, not one nation. The Constitution's opening phrase, "We the people of the United States," completes the evolution from 13 separate states to one nation. That finishes the work the Declaration started. 13 sovereign states have become the single United States. That historic phrase has an author, and few know his name. Gouverneur Morris is the one who changed the preamble's start from "We the people of the states of New Hampshire, New York, etc." to "We the people of the United States." A stroke of Morris's pen turned a list of states into a single nation. The man referred to as the father of the Constitution, James Madison, credited Morris with the document's final language, when Madison wrote that its style and arrangement fairly belongs to the pen of Mr. Morris. Closing thoughts and connecting the dots. The Declaration of Independence is the why, the charter, the purpose, the principles. The Constitution is the how, the bylaws, the organization, the structure. The Declaration is the inspiration. The Constitution is the execution. That relationship isn't just conceptual. The nation has treated it as literal too. Today, the original Declaration and the original Constitution are displayed together in the rotunda of the National Archives in Washington, D.C., alongside the Bill of Rights, under the collective name, the Charters of Freedom. They're not filed separately or kept in different buildings. They sit side by side in the same room, under the same protection, as one continuous statement of what the country is and how it governs itself. The founders wrote them as a matched set. The nation has physically preserved them as a set ever since. Think of it as a 3-act play. The Declaration is Act 1, the Constitution is Act 2, and the Bill of Rights, right there with them, is Act 3. There's more where this came from. How the Declaration went on to inspire founding charters of over 100 other nations. The Gouverneur Morris Pegleg story, the Article 5 connection, and how these 18th century documents impact 21st century life. Subscribe to Constitutional Soundbites for those highlights and much more. A like for this video would be greatly appreciated. Share to help build both knowledge and interest in American history heritage, and law.